All right, so like grubs, I mean, when it comes down to it, can be a problem and are a problem on an annual basis for some people. Truth be told, the number of lawns I see that have actual grub damage is relatively low. There's not a huge number of lawns that are devastated by grubs on an annual basis. As things have it, we get inundated with phone calls about people wanting treatments for grubs. The majority of the time, the concern is moles. Treating grubs to control moles is ultimately just not effective. When you go back 30 years or so, you think about the chemicals that were being used back then, the products were killing everything in the soil, be it earthworms, grubs, any other insects. It was killing it, all that. So when you do that, you do physically or ultimately eliminate the grub's food source, or the mole's food source, and kill the grubs in the process. So the moles would leave, and as a result of, these old traditions and the old products, people still think that you can treat for grubs and eliminate moles, and that's just not the case. Through the years, the products have evolved to become a lot more pest specific, and we know now that putting down a product that's going to kill everything just flat out isn't healthy. It's not good for the environment, it's not good for us. So with that, we use products that target grubs very specifically, and it's pretty simple. It's kind of like if say my favorite food is steak. Yeah, I love getting a nice big juicy steak, but if you take that out of my diet, I'm going to be just fine. And that's kind of the same thing for the moles. You might be eliminating one of their favorite food sources, but when it comes down to it, they can find plenty of other stuff to sustain. So earthworms, any other insects they're running into in the soil. Treating grubs is not an effective means of eliminating moles. The other thing we get a lot of calls for grubs about is when a person's out there digging. They're trying to plant shrubs, and they'll see that, hey, I found 2 grubs while I was digging. I need to treat these. I mean, if you want to, okay, but is there really a grub problem if you dig up 2 or 3 square feet and find 2 grubs? No. Now, if you're digging up a square foot and you find 6 or 8 grubs, well, then you've got a concern and you need to do something about it before they cause damage. But again, just because you see a grub does not mean you have a grub problem. It's perfectly natural, perfectly normal to have grubs. I tell people that if you haven't treated for them, you're going to have some. The question is, do you have enough to have a problem? And we have no way of knowing, no way of predicting that. I tell people a lot of times that grub treatments are kind of like an insurance policy. Well, you may or may not need it, but the thing of it is, if you don't do it and you lose your lawn because of it, you're going to wish you did. So that's kind of how I like to approach grub treatments. There are 2 different types of I'll say grub products out there, and actually there's a whole lot more than 2, but there's 2 basic thought processes. One is to eliminate grubs when they're doing damage, so you can treat them either spring or fall when they're actively feeding on the lawn. When we're doing that, we typically use a product called Dilox, which is very effective in killing even mature grubs, but the reality of it is that's really not the best way to go about it, because if you have a problem, you're already sustaining damage. What we prefer to do is more of a preventative. We can use a product, used to be called Merit, but since it's come off patent, many companies offer it, called the midacloprid. That product is something you actually put down when the grubs are not even in the soil. You put that down basically June and July, or late June and July, while the beetles are up and flying around. That way when they come and lay their eggs, and those eggs go to hatch, it's killing them basically before they can even really start to mature. So you're putting out a lot, I'll say it's a less potent chemical, and it's a little more sustained. It hangs in the soil for a little while, and it's able to kill those grubs before they become a problem. So you don't have a problem with them in the fall, and because they're not there in the fall, you don't have a problem with them in the spring. Now, if you go a year without doing that, you will have grubs again. It doesn't work to where it stops them for multiple years. It's really just you put it down in the summer, and it prevents the fall rise, as well as the spring rise. But that next summer, beetles are going to fly in from your neighbor's lawn and lay eggs. So yeah, now people ask all the time, how do I know if I have a grub problem? And really the easiest way is to look, and if you see areas of the lawn starting to die off, if you go and pull on that, if you grab it near the base of the plant and pull on it, what'll happen is it'll peel up kind of like carpet that's not held down. Because the grubs, the way they actually damage turf is to devour the root system. With those roots gone, there's nothing left to hold it to the ground, and it really becomes pretty obvious. I actually used to do some work, and they had this big hill out front, and I was running an aerator on it. And you go sideways across the hill with the aerator, and I'm going, and all of a sudden I was not just going sideways, but I was sliding down. And it wasn't me sliding, it was a big patch of grass under me and the aerator. So it was almost like I was surfing down the hill on a sheet of grass that was no longer attached to the ground. So they can really do some damage, but again, you never really have a way to predict when they're going to be a problem for you. They hit some people every year, and again, the best way to treat for them is with that summer treatment and get them when they're young. So yeah, as far as treatment, two ways to think about it. Curative, which means you're treating once they're there and they're a problem. Best way to treat for them, in my opinion, is to be proactive and be preventative. Treating preventatively would mean that you're treating basically somewhere the tail end of June through the month of July. You're putting a product on the ground. Again, the one we use is called imidacloprid, and it essentially kills these grubs before they have a chance to really get established. That's going to give you your most effective means of control because it's killing them right after the beetles lay the eggs hatch, the grubs are dead. So they never have a chance to do damage that way, and that is by all means the best way, and honestly one of the safer ways to treat for them with chemicals. If you have to do it, if you notice that you didn't do that treatment and you notice that they're causing damage, then you can go in and treat curatively with a more aggressive chemical like Dialox.